Welcome to the podcast, where today's episode, we're doing a Pokemon retrospective.
Let's do the time warp again.
Welcome to the Deep End, our captivating discussion series where we dive into the depths of the current Pokemon news and theories, and today we're going to take a look back at 30 years of Pokemon. The crew here today is an ensemble that had entered the franchise from different points in time of their lives. So X brought up the fact that, what if we did a Pokemon retrospective based on what we saw, what got us into the series, how basically we saw the franchise grow from our point of view. And so let's dive into it. I mean, we've all kind of got into the franchise at around the same time because we were basically around for the launch of the series. However, in my case, I was getting into adulthood when the series had come out. And X, you were in your teens, I would assume, right? No, you were getting into your teens.
It was high school time, like middle school, middle school was when like things first started kicking off for me, but then high school was like the central like memories of it.
And I would imagine that Cayla, Chase, and Guren, you guys were fairly young when the series pretty much blew up and just was everywhere. So your perspective is definitely that of what I guess the new Pokemon fan base would be for today's metrics.
I mean, I think I was like sick,
I was
really, really young.
yeah, for sure, yeah. I was definitely in elementary school when I first found out about Pokemon, for sure.
I was
So
but a wee egg being incubated.
That's right.
So I guess it's basically on Draco and me to go over, like, when it first started, we didn't have this mentality that this is going to be like a whole thing. Monster collector games weren't like even a thing. Then we got hit with like Monster Rancher, Pokemon, Digimon, and all these different things, and it was Pokemon that really ended up breaking out here in America and taking the lead. And there's arguments for days that Digimon probably should have pulled ahead, but that's not the community that we stand for here. We're Pokemon.
I don't know. I mean, I remember Monster Rancher, and I love Monster Rancher. I think that's a great series in itself. I think it had an interesting dynamic for a monster catching type of game. Digimon was really, in my point of view, the main competitor, and I think the reason why Digimon was beat out by Pokemon at this point is because even though the anime were very similar, where it was an adventure with a partner, and you had these monsters, you had these battles, you had evolution, digivolution, you had a lot of the same elements. What made Pokemon stand out from those other two was the RPG aspect, which at the time, RPGs were really starting to come into their own. You had the Dragon Warrior series, you had the Final Fantasy series, and, you had the adventure games like Zelda. Those were extraordinarily popular at the time, and in comes in Pokemon that kind of blended all of these elements of these different genres together so well. Whereas Digimon was kind of more like hi, you have a partner Pokemon, but now you have to feed it. You have to take it to the bathroom. And the game for that was just so absolutely annoying that I ended up hating it. I didn't spend more than an hour playing Digimon. But when Pokemon came out and you had an RPG, you had over 150 characters to play with and fully customize. And I mean, mind you, the customization of today's games was they're so much better today than they were back then. But that, at the time, this is what we got. This is what we had access to because of technology. It was an absolute wonder for me. And I was just floored and hooked almost from the get-go after opening up my Nintendo Power magazine, first reading about this game.
So how did you acquire your red or blue or eventually yellow? Because you started out Gen 1 just the same as me, I feel.
Yep, I grabbed onto red because I love dragons. I have always loved dragons, and seeing Charizard on the cover, it was a no-brainer for me. But it was actually my brother Jay who got blue initially, and he was having difficulties playing. Pokemon was on my radar, but when he got blue and he was like, hey, I need help, can you help me beat this? And that's when I really connected with the game, was when I helped beat him. I think it was helping him beat Brock, and then I picked up my own copy and I was like, I'm getting red because number one, he doesn't have red, I have red, and number 2, Dragon.
Duh.
I remember how I got my Gen 1 titles. It goes far back. I know I got the Gen 2 for a birthday, and that was like a whole big thing because I wasn't used to such big RPG games getting sequels. Any of you other guys have like real big fond memories of Gen 2? Maybe not when it first came out, but like when you were first introduced to it?
I mean, I remember being introduced to Gen 1 because I was 6 years old, and my twin cousins gave me and my brother their old Game Boys, and I got blue and my brother got red. And because mine had a Squirtle on it, I started with Squirtle, and my brother, because his was red, started with Charmander. And the first thing that we could do as soon as we could is my cousins had us battle each other. And I won. And I was just so excited and hooked after that moment that I was just like, I need to keep playing this. Like me, little 6-year-old, just being like, I'm going to be playing this forever. And that ended up being literally true in a way.
That's pretty true too. Like I can relate to Cayla's story a little bit too. Like my first experience with Pokemon was actually somebody playing on like the original Game Boy, that gray brick one, right? And like it was at a family party. Like I didn't know these kids because I think they were like related to the other members' side, and like they were just playing on that Game Boy. I'm just curious. I'm like watching in the back, and then like the kid that was playing on, he's like, "Oh, did you want to try it out?" And like I had no idea what I was doing, and then like I'm looking through it. What I remember from the time was that he was actually at the Elite Four at that time. So like I got into the battle with one of the members. I don't remember which one specifically, but then like one of the Mons ended up KOing, and then the kid quickly took his Game Boy back. He was like, "Oh, hold on, let me finish this stuff real quick." I guess he didn't want to restart the league if I ended up losing for him. But like, I was curious. I didn't know what that was. I don't even think I even bothered to ask what that was, like, as a kid. Like, I just thought, like, that this seems pretty cool. And then when I first got into the whole Pokemon thing afterwards, that was like coming home from school one day. I turned on the channel. For some reason, it's on, I guess, channel 5 at that time for us, where I live. And like, it was the episode of the giant Pokemon, I think. I think they ended up in the theme park, right? But then everybody thought it was just like gigantic Pokemon. So I saw the gigantic Charizard like thing, and I was like, "What is this? Yo, this is so cool!" And like, yeah. And then from there, like, I just tried to see if I could catch an episode of Pokemon every day, and then just fell in love with the franchise.
Well, for me, it's quite interesting. Draco, I believe it parallels yourself and Jay and that experience quite a bit. But just in this case, it was my brother who had a Game Boy. I was about 6 or 7 at the time. I was never really an inside kid. I would always be outside. So I never really used to watch TV or anything like that. And for his birthday, my brother got, I believe it was whichever came out after the original Game Boy. I think it was it the Pocket or was it
Color.
Probably the color.
There we go. So he got that for his birthday, and so he ended up giving me his old Game Boy, and it had a Pokemon game in there. And you know, I didn't even know how to switch this thing on, so you know, he helped me switch it on. He showed me how to play, whatever. And maybe because it's such a cool memory in my mind, that was like the first time I can actually remember us like really bonding. Maybe that's what drives my passion for the franchise. But I mean, ever since then I was hooked. I mean, I stopped playing outside as much as I used to, and I was glued to this thing. So I sort of had my start with Gen 1. Yeah, so that's my first experience, is like from the perspective of the younger brother.
That's actually really cool, because even though you were so young, you still had to have that Gen 1 experience kind of parallel. When did anyone get introduced to the trading card game? Because I remember it was actually one neighborhood kid that got that first Machine starter deck and brought it over when my mom was babysitting. And me and him just each, drew from the deck for our turn and then played against each other that way.
For me, that was also when I was a little kid. I was probably also 6 years old when I started collecting the cards. I remember I learned how to play the game, though, after the video game came out that kind of taught you how to play. And then I started like doing tournaments and stuff as a little kid.
Coincidentally, mine was actually the same year that I started playing Pokemon, because my mom was very big into Christmas, and she'd be like the type of person like 1st of December hits, put up the tree, start decorating the house, all of that. So we went out, my mom went out shopping, and she took myself and my brother with, and it was supposed to be normal grocery shopping, but I think we ended up, it was either in the same grocery shop or there was like a decoration shop next to it. I can't exactly remember. But I remember us going into that, or going to look at decorations or whatever first. And then as we were finishing up the food shopping after that, near the tills, they had, I think it was only a few packs of Pokemon cards. And because it had Pokemon and I now knew what Pokemon was, I was like, please can I get this what I want, as you would as like a little kid. And my mom was like, no, we've just come for groceries, whatever. And then when we got home, she said, okay, write your Christmas list. And that was the only thing on my Christmas list. So Christmas Day, I open it up and there's all these Pokemon cards.
I had actually was doing some side gigs working for a comic book store and had been let go from my one previous job. So I ended up working at Wizards of the Coast as well. And so I was running Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments in the comic book store, but I was running Pokemon tournaments at Wizards at the retail store that they had. And I was teaching my manager how to play because his daughter was getting into Pokemon. And he's like, I don't understand this game. I play Magic. And so we started building a league for out of the shop for Pokemon cards. And for me, that's when I started getting into them. So like I was at base set 2, Jungle, which ironically was where you get to see the first glimpse of what would later become a Lone Executor, because it looks so different on the box of Jungle. And yeah, so I mean, for me, that was where I was. That's where I went with the cards in itself. And I actually had a pretty decent deck. I have my best deck so far was my Lantern deck.
I think in addition to like playing with people and like all the different merch and the cards and everything, I feel like the rumors that were going around about the things that were hidden in the game, like Mew, were hugely impactful in getting people involved. Because I know on the playground, like as a kid, there were so many rumors about like, oh, like there's that truck and you can go under it. And like, oh, if you do this, you can just fly right to the Elite Four from the beginning. And like all these random things, Lavender Town, like there were so many things going around the playground that it really became like a talking point. And the internet wasn't as big as it is now. So like people were like, maybe it's true.
That's the internet.
Right on that. That was a big thing for me too, is actually having some glitches in the game validated all those schoolyard rumors and gave you an actual reason to at least have the experience of exploring and seeing if any of those rumors were true. Nowadays with the internet, you have data mines to already confirm that that's not the case before you even get the chance to experience the exploration. And on top of that, we have a very toxic feedback system when you do get some of those things wrong. It takes a lot of out of the game to be from way back. Also, to kind of retro back, did anyone participate in any of, like, I know they did the Pokemon trading card game leagues. For me, it was always at the Toys R Us. And I still have, as part of my display, if anyone watches any of the videos, you might be able to notice them on the shelf in the background of my set. All the original badges that they gave you for the first 8 of Kanto, when you got certain key points into there. And that was just awesome. I really missed those gatherings and live events sort of things where you were in the environment surrounded by other fans. And with the internet and the connectivity, I think we're really missing that with modern gaming.
You talk about the event, and I'm reminded of the one and only time I ever took my brother to an event, which we were discussing with Bird Keeper Toby when we were privileged to have him on, about how I almost got arrested.
I love this story.
Well, that was a great story, and anyone listening after this one, Bird Keeper Toby was awesome. Other than that story, just go check out that video. Please do us all a favor. Bird Keeper Toby, do yourself the favor. It's a great story, and Bird Keeper Toby was amazing.
Yeah, he actually stopped us mid recording. Goes, you got to tell this story. I need to hear this.
That's a good story. Go check it out, everyone.
But I do miss the live events that they used to do where you could go to the malls and start downloading different Pokemon, because so that particular instance was trying to get Mew, who this I think was the second go round, because the original trainer for Mew was Luigi. I believe the original giveaway was Mario. Sadly, I did the one thing you do not do in the original run of Pokemon Red, which is catch missing number, because it glitches your game completely. And thanks to Nintendo, they were able to restore the save, not restore the save file, but they uploaded their own save file that got me the Elite Four badges, gave me a bunch of random Pokemon, plus it gave me Mew back into my game. But then when I was flying to Japan, they had done the top 20 chosen Pokemon that they were giving away. During the time that they were doing this giveaway, however, they had still region locked the systems and the games, and I went and I made my trek all the way to the Pokemon Center in Tokyo. And the woman behind the counter was like, "I'm sorry, I can't do this for you because yours is a North American region, and we only have the access to the Japan region. I'm sorry." And so unfortunately, I missed out on that, getting 20 giveaway Pokemon for, I think it was at the time, Generation 3? I'd like to say. Could have been 4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been a while since I went on this trip, but like those events, really, you could see how well the community came together, because I mean that store was absolutely filled to the gills, and it was a small store to begin with. But even the mall events, there were so many people in the mall events. It's something that you had to be there to really truly experience and really appreciate how quickly this franchise grew. And at one point, I was absolutely convinced that they were going to just burn the market out. And it's one of the few times I've ever been wrong on this franchise, straight out, because I've seen franchises do that whole, hey, we're on pencils, we're on pens, we're on backpacks, we're on jackets, we're on this, we're on that, we're on TV, we've got the toys. And usually they just burn the market out, but Pokemon just had the magic formula and has persisted now for almost 30 years. So, one of the few times where I'm actually glad I was wrong.
I think some of the best ways that some of our other members might be able to, when Pokemon Go first came out, it was such a huge thing. We had an area local to me where every single day of the week you can go and there'd be 200 plus people in this public area just walking around. A rare Pokemon would spawn and you'd hear somebody shout from half a mile, "Lapras on the beach!" And everyone would just swarm and rush. And then the camaraderie that this builds, like, I met somebody that I haven't talked to or was friends with since elementary school that recognized me, that came to tell me about a rare Pokemon. And we're running through the woods headed towards the location to this. And it was just, there were so many awesome things that having those people, those other fans, and the other people that are immersed in these experiences around you just added. I don't know if any of you guys ever had this opportunity to go to some of these places or do these experiences.
Pokemon itself was a phenomenon, but I feel like Pokemon Go is a phenomenon in and of itself within the bigger phenomenon that is Pokemon, because there isn't really a big Pokemon community where I'm from. So that's like countrywide. So we hardly ever had like the in-person events or the giveaways or whatever. But I mean, when Pokemon Go came out, I actually realized that there are a lot more people who are interested in Pokemon than I thought there were, albeit it was still a very small group. And I mean, you even got people who weren't really Pokemon fans who, download, or that was the case here, they downloaded the game to play with their friends, and and I've got a couple of mates that Pokemon Go actually sparked their interest in Pokemon.
If we're talking about like the Pokemon Go experience too, like I only played it for a little bit, only because like I wasn't really at the time, like I was excited, right? I was like, oh, this seems pretty cool. I'm gonna get out of the house, catch some Pokemon. I think, but this was like the early days of Pokemon Go, so like the encounter rate was still kind of low, or at least in my area it was pretty low. To like, I think the closest Pokestop was like 10-minute walk about. So like I didn't want to get out too far during the time, but I think it was pretty interesting because like I had some coworkers when it came out. Like I didn't think they were fans of Pokemon, but then they're playing Pokemon Go, and then they're like, hey, I see you're also playing it too. So I joined them for a couple of things, like during lunch breaks, we would go out to like find some Pokemon, do like some raids. Can't remember what raid we did that one time, but that was a fun experience because like I didn't expect to like bond with these coworkers. That was a big surprise to me.
I feel like for most people, it felt like Pokemon Go dropped out of nowhere. But I was one of the few people that was like waiting for it to drop and like checking every day to see when it was going to drop, because I just was like, this is going to be huge. Why is no one talking about this? This is going to be huge. And I still remember going to GameStop and asking them like, hey, do you have the device for Pokemon Go? And they told me Pokemon Go wasn't a thing. And that like they gave me a look like, oh, like this girl. And I was like, okay. So I left, and then like a week later it drops. I'm like, but I have arthritis, and so walking is something that's really challenging for me. So leading up to Pokemon Go, I was literally going for walks with like the Pokemon music in my headphones, like imagining Pokemon Go had come out, and it really helped me kind of improve my walking health, because it was just like, it was something that motivated me to like really try to do that. And I talked to other people when I was playing Pokemon Go who went through similar things where they like got motivated to improve their fitness. So that was awesome.
I definitely understand where you're coming from, where you went to GameStop and they told you that game doesn't exist. I had the same encounter with a local game store in my area, actually. They deal with retro games. For whatever system, they got Atari 2600 games. And so I walked in and I'm like, do you guys ever get Pokemon Box? And the guy behind the counter was like, well, that game was never released. That was only for promotional issues. Like, no, it was released, and it's not a game. It's a storage system. There's no way. Like, GameStop sold it. Like, I literally got into this with him, and the guy was vehemently saying, nope, that's not a thing. It's not a thing. But I do remember the phenomenon that was Pokemon Go. As a matter of fact, it was between Gen 6 and Pokemon Go that my wife got into Pokemon. And she's not as voracious as I am, but she has her favorites. She has a few statues and plushies around the bedroom of her favorites that I've picked up over the years. But she still plays Pokemon Go. She's actually playing Pokemon Sleep as well. She enjoys those games. She's not as into the main stories as I am. But even on her phone, she's even got me locked in there as her Pokeboy. Not even husband, I'm her Pokeboy. But yeah, it was such a weird phenomenon, just walking around with people and knowing that they're playing Pokemon Go at the same time. And it's like, wow, never realized how many adults were seriously into Pokemon until Pokemon Go dropped in the first year. It was just absolutely bonkers seeing people all the time at the stops.
When I went to Japan, I think we were still in Shibuya because we were playing Pokemon Go while we were walking around or whatever, because there were raids going on. I can't remember what the raid boss was. And this is a standout thing for me, because I feel like Pokemon Go sort of transcended borders and language barriers and all of that, because I was shouting at this Japanese man in English and he was shouting at me in Japanese, and we were both playing Pokemon Go. We were trying to figure out where the raid was. And it was only until another Japanese guy came and who could sort of speak English relatively well, and he said, no, it's over that way. And then we both looked at each other, and it was like that look of realization that, if we just carried on walking, we would have found it eventually. But it was amazing what Pokemon Go actually did for the community itself and how it grew it. Well, I believe it grew it.
I was going to say, the Pokemon Go thing was absolutely a phenomenon, but the first time somebody told me about the part where this was kind of the thing in my area, and I went there. This is when I was driving. I get out, I pull up, and I just see hordes of people. I get out, and it brought me back to when I was younger, and I walked into the premiere day of Pokemon the first movie. I don't know if anyone else had that experience, but I felt like I walked into a Pokemon convention. We went an hour early. There was people in costumes. There were people battling Game Boy. There were little mini card game tournaments going on everywhere. It was an absolute mini phenomenon of its own thing. Even when the movie was on, it was like a kiddie version where we just sat there and chatted and the whole thing. I don't know how I remembered that movie from that experience, because so many other things were going on at once. Draco, did you get to go see it relatively close to premiere?
Oh yeah, I took my brother to see that one. Donphan was still my favorite opening. When the second Donphan come out of the ball, it was just like, what is that? I love that.
Fun fact. The first Pokemon movie came out 3 days after I was born, and which is coincidentally the same day as my dad's birthday.
Oh, nice.
That's cool, because so growing up, my dad was always a tall fella, and he peaked at 6'7". And some of you Mega fans, especially of the 151, realize that that's Mewtwo's canonical height. So there's always been just this weird association with Mewtwo and my father. Even to the degree that when my father left this world, I had a friend that was playing Pokemon Go at the very first Mewtwo raids, and he actually has a Mewtwo that he caught and is named for my father on his file.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome.
I remember seeing the first movie when it came out when I was a kid. I just remember crying when Ash, and I was like, all the Pokemon are crying, and I'm crying, and then he came back, and I'm just like, I felt so relieved because I thought it was the end of everything. I was like, this is the end of the franchise. Ash has died. And then I was like, oh, phew.
25 years later, he finally gets to retire.
No, seriously, I had the same thoughts too. Like, I was like, are they killing off the franchise? Like, they just introduced a couple new Pokemon. They're gonna kill the franchise now? What?
I think I kind of envy you guys for that a little bit too, because like I never got to see it in theaters. So, like, I never had that experience of like the crowds and everything. They're like, I think back then, like, it was still hard for me to be able to like go to those places, I think. And like, usually if I do go to like a movie theater or something, it would be with my dad, but then he'd be like watching a different movie. So like, I wouldn't be watching what I wanted to watch at the time. So like, I had to watch it on VHS, but I gotta say though, like, even watching it on my screen on VHS, like, I was just super astounded. Like, I was like, this is a great movie. I got hit with like with the emotions of like that Ash scene, and then like and then the whole thing with like Donphan coming out. I was like, what is that Pokemon? I've never seen it before. I like how it's rolling around and everything. I need to have it. And then like another funny story, this is I've always had gold version, so I never had access to Donphan at all unless I traded, but I didn't have anyone to trade with at the time. So it's like I just never had Donphan for like the longest time still.
I've got to admit, like, there's I think Guren just keep confused at least half of our audience. So like, what the hell's a VHS?
It's like an 8-track, but with movies.
What the hell's an 8-track?
It's kind of like a laser disc, but not a disc.
See, that's something I think about a lot too, because like when I was a kid, I couldn't go to the Toys R Us events and I really wanted to. And as much as like moving to online can be really frustrating because it's like, oh, we don't have like as close of a community anymore, I feel like it kind of democratized the franchise where like anybody could get mystery gift Pokemon, people can play online, people can all watch YouTube videos even if you can't afford to go to the movies. Like, they've done a lot of work to make it so that anybody who wants to play Pokemon probably can find a way to play Pokemon.
Yeah.
I actually have one more ball to pitch. A conversation about the graphics. The whole drive for this reality or perfected art style of graphics, I think, is actually ruining a big part of the gaming experience that we got when we were younger. I've showed it on video during our conversation. Me and my roommate are actually, we have Digivices, the wonderful X series. It's actually been really fun if you're nostalgic, check it out. But that has brought me, like, a friend said he doesn't like that version because of how pixelated and everything that the monsters are. And my argument was that the versions of the monsters that are actually in this game are like a newer, updated version. They're like the X I don't know. I don't follow Digimon lore. I'm a Pokemon fan. And the thing is, that's not nostalgic to me. But when it's so rudimentary in its graphics, I can project to the experience that I want to have on that and not be limited to the railroad experience that they are trying to provide me with. And I don't know if anyone else feels the same, because when I look up some of the pictures of the Digimon I get, I'm really disappointed, and I just tell myself I have what I want.
Digimon is quite a weird one, because I actually didn't watch the Pokemon anime, at least not initially. I actually watched the Digimon anime, because that's what I thought that was like the same thing as Pokemon. I thought it was like, you know, maybe just a continuation or something along those lines. It was only until later that my brother actually points out, no, they're not the same thing.
I have one more point about competitive Pokemon, because I've heard a lot of people say, oh, it's really difficult to build competitive Pokemon. But for people who have been playing Pokemon for a long time, like since early on, people have no idea how hard it was to EV train. Like, I EV trained for the first time back in Gen 2, right? And if you look up how EV training worked in Gen 2, it was insane. I was trying to do it because my Kingdra was bad and I didn't know why. And I found out it was because it had all defense EVs. And back then there was no way to reset EVs. There was no way to get a second Kingdra. So I was just like, I have to restart my entire game if I want to retrain, like EV train a Kingdra. And like, that doesn't happen anymore in modern games. And like, there's just so many other things that you could do so much easier, like bottle caps. Oh my gosh, bottle caps. Amazing. Everyone should really be thankful for what we have and learn about the history of it, because your mind will be blown.
I don't even know what EVs and IVs are. Gen 1, Gen 2, they didn't tell us about that. We had to, figure things out on our own and just realize, why is this stat going up 2 when it's supposed to go up 1? The EVs and IVs, wasn't it in Gen 1, you could actually max out each individual stat in the EVs? In Gen 2, where there was the caps where you could only do so many points.
That I don't know.
I know for sure Gen 2 had a limit, but the way that you earned them was very different. It was insane. It was insane. And that also with how slow level up was in Gen 2, it made it so difficult to get your EVs right.
It's grindy.
Yeah, I was definitely one of those guys just playing through the game, and it's like, oh, yep, I'm just going to use 1 or 2 Pokemon mainly, so just really think about
I mean, I'm reliving that Let's Go Eevee. I just have a level 89 Eevee when everything else is level 50, and my opponents are still around 35.
I didn't actually find out anything to do with competitive until X and Y. And then I really started digging really deep into it. And Taylor's right, the modern conveniences, although X and Y is a modern convenience, has some of the modern conveniences like the vitamins and that. But the quality of life stuff for competitive that are in Scarlet and Violet, I mean, egg moves, EV training, breeding, all of that, it's just so much easier. And it makes life a lot more simpler when you want to get into competitive.
I think too, having the academies teach people how to battle is huge, because I feel like it's opening up competitive to a wider audience. And with all the connections to the internet nowadays, it's really making competitive Pokemon a real thing. Plus them like pushing like Wolfie's content, like that's really great for the franchise.
I love the Blueberry Academy because for once I felt like we were starting to get an actual learning bridge between core gameplay and competitive game, where I don't think any of the other games really did that. They would throw you into a battle facility where it was just 6v6, and they never really taught you how to deal with VGC.
Just real quick, since you brought up battling, some of us have actually joined the Hidden Power podcast in their private Discord for the Hidden Power League, and you are actually watching a couple of the gym leaders. So if you wanted to get into some kind of a gym leader challenge and meet and speak with some of us, as well as battle us with our respective teams, give those guys a shout out, a check out. They've been very helpful to our channel. And, this is a really cool idea that we've never been able to implement ourselves, but glad to be a part of. So definitely come check us out there.
That is if you think you have the champion spirit.
And with that brings our episode to a close. Let us know what you think about our discussion and retrospective of Pokemon. Let us know when you got into the series and what was your favorite experiences. Also, be sure to share, like, and subscribe. Let us know how we're doing. And thank you, X and Cayla, for joining us today.
I absolutely love this. I want to hear every single one of the Pokemon Champions experiences in graphic detail. See you in the comments.
And with that, have a wonderful day. Bye.
Heroes.
Bye.
Till 10.